These are chocolate chickpea brownies. A can of chickpeas, cocoa powder. I'm using a mixture of dark and regular. Flour. I'm using almond flour and oat flour. Flour. Milk. Applesauce. Nut butter. Vanilla. And sugar. I'm going to start by rinsing the beans. And I chose chickpeas, but you can use any beans that don't have a strong flavor. So like refried beans is going to give it a very specific taste that you may not want. But chickpeas and white beans don't have a strong bean flavor, and so they'll go in really easy. If you don't find a can of chickpeas or white beans at the grocery store, I canned my own. But you can also do it a longer way. Just take dried beans. You can soak them overnight and then cook them, or you can use an Instant Pot, which I think takes a lot less time and gets you the results that you need. We're going to need what is my new best friend on a soft food diet, and that is a food processor. I'm going to pour the beans into the food processor, and we're going to blend them up till they're pureed. It usually takes a little bit of liquid to help with the puree. So I'm also going to add in some milk. 3 tablespoons worth. If you don't want to use milk, you could use applesauce instead. You could also use water. Water might affect the taste and make it taste not as rich. So 3 tablespoons. I'm using almond milk. It doesn't matter what type of milk you use. This whole process is going to be adding a little bit of dry ingredients and a little bit of the wet ingredients and blending them together, because if you added all the dry in at once, it wouldn't want to blend. So we add a little bit of each one together. 4 tablespoons of cocoa powder. And then the wet that I'm going to add with the cocoa powder is nut butter. If you don't want it, if you're allergic to nuts or you don't want to use nut butter, you can use oil instead. But you're going to need 3 tablespoons. I'm using 3 tablespoons of peanut butter. Peanut butter is a strong flavor that's going to come through in your dessert. If you want to use a nut butter with less strong flavor, I would suggest almond butter. I'm going to add in a teaspoon of vanilla and 3 to 4 tablespoons of applesauce. And I know this is all barely fitting in the food processor, but the only one I have is a small food processor. If I had a larger food processor, I would absolutely be using that. With the applesauce, I'm going to add in 1/3 cup of flour. I'm using oat flour, which is just regular oats taken out of the tube and put into the food processor until they turn into a fine powdery dust. And that's oat flour. You could use almond flour instead. You could use all-purpose flour. I chose oat flour or almond flour because of the protein. They have more protein than regular all-purpose flour. thing that makes it a dessert is sugar. You need a half cup of sugar. You can use brown sugar or white sugar, date sugar, any type of sugar. It doesn't matter which kind. I'm going to use brown sugar. Here's the thing that makes it taste like a dessert. There are other recipes out there where people have substituted beans to make it healthier, but then they don't add any sugar and it just ends up tasting like beans with cocoa powder on top. The sugar here is what makes it absolutely taste like a dessert. Once everything is all mixed up for the last time, I'm going to put it in a pint jar. What I've done before is taken a quarter pint jar. A quarter pint is equivalent to half a cup. And just portioned it out, and then each night I take out whatever portion and eat that as my dessert for the night. This dessert works really well as something you don't have to chew at all. And one reason I really liked this recipe was because it had a lot of opportunities to add protein. Like the oat flour or almond flour will add protein. The peanut butter adds protein. The beans add protein. So even though it does have sugar in it, it's something that felt a lot healthier because I was able to add a lot more protein. If you wanted to make these into regular brownies, you would add a quarter teaspoon of baking soda and 1 teaspoon of baking powder. And then I put them in a 9x9 pan and cook them for about 15 minutes at 350. They'll come out and they'll feel really soft, and what the website recommended was to put them in the refrigerator, and as they cool off they'll become more solid. This recipe is from a website called Chocolate Covered Katie. I'll link it below. She came up with a recipe that I was so thankful for because it allowed me to have a dessert that felt pretty decadent, and it gave me something to eat that was more than mashed potatoes. When I make a dessert bowl out of this, I usually put the brownie batter in the middle and surround it with yogurt, and then I take fruit that's either been pureed or that I mashed up myself with a fork and put that on top.